Welcome to another episode of Matrix Assassins. The Great Awakening map is the quintessential red pill navigational chart for escaping the Matrix, a must have compass to navigate the wild world of rabbit holes and a tool to help uncover the mysteries of the universe. From the deep state to the deepest state of mind, today we are joined by the enigma behind the Great Awakening map, an award winning artist, a yogi, a red pill aficionado, and our friend Champ Parinya. Champ, how are
Hi,
you this morning?
thank you so much for having me back on Matrix Assassins. I'm ready for the deepest rabbit hole digs with you guys.
Can't wait.
Cannot wait. So, I think we want to just really dive in and kind of talk about your takes on DMT. And I guess there's just I don't even really know where to start when it comes to DMT because there's so many different types of opinions when it comes to what it is, what it can bring to somebody's life, how to even get involved with it. So we were curious to kind of like really touch on your experiences.
Dimethyltryptamine is by far the most enigmatic substance in the entire universe. It is something that no human being or no computer program could possibly even comprehend or try to recreate visually in any type of form. You cannot even comprehend it in terms of writing and language and music. It's just so impossible, yet there it is. It exists. And it exists in this dimension outside of our 3D reality. And that is why it's so hard for others to grasp what it is. And that's why so many people around the world misunderstand what it is, because it's not something that's easily accessible. And it's an entire dimension full of unexplainable imagery and feelings and information and data and religious, spiritual feelings that somebody who just comes into it for the first time, it's going to bring so many more questions than answers. But the most stunning thing about the DMT that we're speaking about is that it's such a powerful psychedelic in terms of what it can show you in a visual sense. But when we say visual, it's not that we're seeing it with our eyes, because when we see things with our eyes, we're seeing light and shadow, which is created by our sun or artificial lighting within our rooms. But when you are looking at the realm of DMT, you're viewing it through your third eye. You're viewing it through your mind. And when you view it through your third eye, you're seeing a world that doesn't have any shadows. And it's this world where objects are imbued with light. It's if light could take on a physical form itself. This is what you're seeing. And you're also countless types of beings, multidimensional beings, interdimensional beings. Nobody really knows what to call them because we don't know where they're existing. So in terms of the visuals and the scenes that you see, the landscapes, the visual scapes, the psychedelic scapes, you also get to meet all sorts of incredible beings. Some are really scary and some are just beautiful, angelic beings. Some of them are just reflections of yourself. It's endless. And the more that you try to talk about it using language, the more I think that you destroy this realm, because language is just so limiting. And artists have a very difficult time trying to portray what the DMT experience is. And usually we're just left with some really badly painted murals of these abstract realms and beings that are just really colorful. But there's just so much more than that, than just seeing a painting of what we may see on Instagram or other psychedelic artists have created. I mean, these are just very, very limited. So to speak about DMT is to sort of take away from its infinite nature. But today we're going to try and try to sort it out and figure out what it is. Because I think that's what DMT really wants you to do, is try to figure out what it is with our limited human minds, this infinite sacred substance that is so elusive.
So I have two, I feel like they're kind of basic questions about it, but one is, how long does the experience last? And also, have you found when talking to others who have experienced it, are there similar experiences across different people, or is it usually a very individualized and personalized experience?
I find that it can be both. It can be very, very alien and distinct and unique for each person. Yet at the same time, this is the most fascinating thing. At the same time, there are certain themes and motifs that you'll discover if you properly do DMT. Because the experience can last anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 5 minutes max. I don't think anybody can handle anything longer than that because of the sheer amount of information that's going through your mind and your third eye and your body. It's an entire ephemeral experience. And somebody who has studied the work of Terence McKenna, he is one of the greatest intellectuals of our time. He is the person who has delved the most deeply into psychedelics such as DMT and psilocybin. So my experiences with psychedelics were from all of his YouTube lectures that I listened to for hours and hours and years before I even came across my first mushroom experience, let alone finding DMT and actually successfully doing it in a few psychedelic journeys that I've had. I've also had some failures where the first time nothing really happened. And this is very common for those who are not in the proper mindset, or they're not in the proper setting, or maybe the people and the friends that are doing it with them or showing it to them, they're not the type of people that you should have been doing it with. So DMT is not going to let you through its gates unless the circumstances are just perfect, or unless the dosage is very high and very potent and very fresh. So there's a lot of factors involved with successfully doing DMT and entering the realms that it's ready to show you. But some of the themes that I was mentioning, some of the things that most people see are the first few seconds of it is where it's sort of like when two computers are dialing into each other to go onto the internet, and there's like this communication back and forth. They're trying to connect to each other, they're trying to figure out where each other is. And then all of a sudden, when everything is sort of like a burnout analogy that many people have discovered. They also explain it as sort of like a tunnel that you're entering, all sorts of analogies of this entrance type of feeling. But once you pass through this sort of membrane gate, most people won't be able to pass this for several attempts. But if you can pass this entrance barrier, once you're in, it's a no doubt thing that you're in. You will know, because it is just the most unexplainable set of visuals that you're going to see of these blisteringly bright lights, that so bright that you've never seen color like this in your life. You're going to just be so overcome with the wonder of just seeing color for the first time in its pure form, as pure light, 100% pure light, not using our eyes where, when we see things with our eyes, so much information is being lost as it's entering our eye and flipping around our brain and going through our nervous system and our channels. We're not really seeing light. We're just seeing this filtered representation of what our body thinks light is supposed to be. So when you're seeing light for the first time, I mean, since you were born, like how many years have you been alive? For you to see colors, like the color green, this lime green light, I remember the first experience I had, I was just so overwhelmed with that. And that was just like the first split second of entering this realm, let alone like the trillions of other visuals that you're going to see and beings that you're going to meet. So the colors, the vibrancy of the entrance, and the beings of light that you see are like these spiraling pinwheels. And I couldn't figure out what they were for so long. And Terence McKenna referred to them as machine elves because he realized that these beings are sort of like these builders of light, and they would show you things as you entered their realm. They would show you toys. They would show you these hyperdimensional objects that were made of light and made of thoughts. Without using language, you would be able to just see something and have all of these historical thoughts that you've been carrying around with you from past lives. They would sort of like be activated for the first time, and you would get this sense of deja vu that would come over your entire body. And it's this feeling that you've been here before, and it's so familiar, and it's someplace that you've seen trillions of times in past lives. And that's the magnitude of realizing something like that is just so profound, because not only are you at this point of your life where you realize that death is not the end, you realize that you've been here many times past death. And this is just another moment in the historical eons of your existence where you've popped back into this realm again. And it's just full of this sacred imagery of temples and inner earth worlds and these light palaces that you just have no idea what they are, but you just know that you've been here before. And that feeling of this love and confusion and fear and beauty, it's a theme many people encounter, but nobody is going to explain it in the same way because everybody's past life is different leading up to that experience. But I do think that these scenes that you are seeing, they are scenes that deal heavily with the type of karma and past life that you've brought into this life now. So the bodies that we use to do DMT, they're all going to be different bodies. And your body and my body, they're going to have different visions. And you're going to be taken to different lands that I've been taken to. And you may not see some of the Chinese, Tibetan, Indian temples that I saw, but many people will see them too. And many people will visit scenes from ancient Egypt, or what can be said to be Egyptian imageries, pyramids, and hieroglyphics, which I did see as well. But even though that was very fascinating and profound, the most fascinating thing for me was to see language like Sanskrit and Hindi and Chinese even. These are languages I've never studied. I've never even memorized how to write one character of these languages, yet I saw volumes and volumes and manuals of works of things written in these languages. And you could look at these languages like really up close, and you can see each letter form written in exact detail. But I've never studied these languages, so I do not know how they ended up in my mind in these visions for days and days. You know, you could just see things written all over the place on these temples. And the architecture of these temples are just so precise. I've never studied architecture or engineering, so I couldn't build any of these things if I tried. So, but here they are existing in this realm in such perfect architectural detail. You could see each line and cut of these palaces, but these are palaces made out of light. But they're decorated in the same way that you would see in Buddhist paintings and in Buddhist temples. Same type of colors and iconography being used. Just doesn't make any sense to me. I grew up as an American South California boy. I had no interest in this kind of stuff I had no interest in temples or Buddhism when I was living in California. There's no explanation for why I could see these realms. And it's just crisp detail. And a lot of people do see these Buddhist temples and imagery. That's why so many books are written about Buddhism and psychedelics. And I think a lot of people can also relate with me for seeing these sacred religious places and visions.
That's so wild to think about that. You know, it's one thing if I, take DMT and I experience a certain vision and I have like my own personal things that happen, but it's like when everybody does it and they tap into the same thing, it makes me wonder, are we tapping into a different dimension that is existing like parallel with us? Is that something that could be possible? It's like when it's like a mass quote unquote like hallucination, is it just, are we just tapping into a different reality?
I think that all of our minds are connected.
Mm.
And when we are in those higher dimensional realms, we're going to see certain constructs of this dimension that we've all created ourselves. So for example, when the Buddhists die, there's a type of Buddhism where you can train your mind through meditation to enter this pure land at the moment of death. And this pure land is called Sukhavati or Sukhavarti. Common names for it are like Shambhala and stuff like that, Shangri-La. This pure land is entered into by millions of Buddhists. And this pure land is a place that is created by this construct of everybody's mind coming together and holding this dimension in place. It's very fascinating to even consider that this has been possible for eons of time. So if you think back before the creation of our Earth, there have been Buddhas that have lived on other planets. These enlightened Buddhas have created this pure land that exists just somewhere here inside of you and me. We can enter that at the moment of death. I think that many people who are taking psychedelics are seeing some aspect of these pure lands. Maybe they're not seeing Sukhavarti. Maybe they're not seeing this exact pure land, but they are seeing these certain realms that are being held in place by the consciousness of beings, angelic beings, higher dimensional beings who can hold these worlds together and have other people enter them to experience love and peace and a place of rest between lives, maybe between moments of psychedelic usage, for example. Because when I remember that on many mushroom journeys, I would enter the same space every time. And I would be like, why is this here again? It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, am I home? Is this like where we go when we die? It can't be. It's not like specific enough. It wasn't, it had this homeness to it, this deja vu-ness, but there was nothing else to it. Like I was still in my body, but it was like, to fully go there, you have to die. And I think at that psychedelic state of the journey, you see that there's just such a thin line between life and death. And to want to see more and want to know more, you have to commit to death. And I never did that, obviously, because we were still here together talking. So there's always this moment of the psychedelic trip where if you want to see more, you have to wait till you're dead. And that is just so sacred and so profound, to go all the way to the very edge of life many times, not just once. And to see that with DMT, I kind of think DMT pushes you past that border, but it pushes you in terms of like, you're still hanging on by this cord back to your body. But I think DMT is able to push you past a boundary of death. And you're sort of like grazing the bottom of these pure lands. You're kind of peeking into them, but you're not fully entering them. You're just kind of seeing like a postcard banner ad of these places, which I think the psychedelic trip is this is just this tease, it's this postcard of what you can see past death. And for people who are fearless and courageous, spiritual seekers, this is for them. But DMT is not for the typical person that you're going to see walking down the street shopping at Walmart and Target, just finding them. Okay.
Yeah.
They're like more concerned with what
They-
recipes are going on their Pinterest
Mhm.
board than to go to the edge of death.
No, at all. Yeah. They did not want to be near this type of realm. They would be terrified.
Yeah, the more you describe this experience, the more I just keep thinking like this takes somebody that is like fearless to really go to the brink and like to take yourself to the edge, takes somebody that has to have that like adventurous spiritual seeker sense and traits to them. And now I'm
I think
questioning. Go ahead.
I think there's also a lot of just random curious party kids who just want to do this, in the back room with their friends somewhere. And I think that sometimes these kids may get lucky, and I think they may enter these realms. They may enter maybe even just the first levels of it, where it's just a bunch of like party colors and just confetti everywhere, and they don't really get anywhere deeper than that. I mean, that is still a part of the trip, and they go around telling people that they did DMT and they saw all of these whatever aliens and stuff. I mean, there are certain aspects of it that just a typical person having no spiritual inclination or interest whatsoever, I think these people can still get something out of it. But for somebody who has meditated for many years and who has had a sort of respectful reverence to sacred imagery and religions and spiritual teachings, I think that these people are going to go further into this realm. I think these people may even be able to see more of the Pure Lands, see more of the Buddhas, and get something out of the trip rather than just this Disneyland one-day trip kind of ride where it's just like over so quickly and there's just nothing that they can bring back from it. They didn't visit the gift shop and buy the toys.
Right. It's almost like, it's a checkbox, and it's not as much about integrating it. It's more just saying that you did it and just like did it once, but really superficially.
It's just so impossible to bring back anything from these realms. I mean, even for myself as an artist, I've had an entire art career where I've created these psychedelic landscapes, these landscape photos, abstract photos that I would show in LA at galleries, and I would just be so confused as where I was going as an artist at that time, because this is before I even had my Instagram and the Great Awakening map. I was just an artist trying to figure it all out and show people these realms. But nobody was even able to comprehend what I was talking about. I mean, there'd be like one person at every show who would be like, hey, yeah, man, I've done shrooms and I get it. That's all right, cool, like bro hug.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are people who get it, but for the masses, I don't think that they're even able to comprehend what exactly is this psychedelic space. That's why there's so much fear behind it. And that is why there's so much censorship on Instagram and Twitter. And I mean, Float Universe, you had him on your podcast maybe more than once. And he has been censored for posting memes about DMT. And even myself, I've gotten 2 shadow bans for posting memes, very kid-friendly memes about DMT. It had no photos of the drugs or anything like that whatsoever. It was just a meme of Terence McKenna speaking a quote about it, and somehow it got flagged and got me shadow banned even more, and even Float got censored. So I mean, the ignorance of this topic is so great that I think one of the most terrible disservices you could ever do to humanity is to censor this topic, especially big tech censoring this topic. If there was a crime that was so great that you could compare to all the crimes ever done in humanity, censoring the hyperdimensional realms so other people don't know about it. I think that is one of the worst things you could ever do, because this is one of the peak moments of being a human. What it means to be a human, to see these realms as a human being. I don't think there's anything more sacred than what you are going to see on these psychedelic trips. And to censor this topic from people is to keep people in this cage of ignorance and suffering for their entire life without truly knowing who they are and their potential. And it's totally obvious that there's a deep state agenda to keep us from knowing these sacred states of our mind and consciousness. And we have to do everything that we can to just keep sharing and spreading this information and inspiring others to seek it, because it's not for everybody, maybe not this lifetime, but for those who are spiritually lucky, they will glimpse maybe just even a spark of this world that we're talking about today, and hopefully be inspired to not only seek psychedelics, but to seek the necessary, steps involved for getting there, which is, cultivating love and compassion, peace, and meditation, and transforming yourself spiritually so that you are ready for these journeys to the better, higher, more exciting place that we can see outside of the human body. Because, living in this world of samsara can just be so tiring. And when you get this vacation to 5D, 6D, it's like it can give you a whole new outlook on life. It can inspire you to live courageously and never give up. And that's what I think psychedelic trips have done for myself. It's given me this extra boost of not quitting in life and just like, don't worry, everything is going to be okay. There's so much more coming. I think that's the greatest thing I can hold on to from all of the crazy things I've seen.
It makes sense why it would be so heavily censored for that exact reason, because, power structures don't want people to have access to that type of knowledge or experience, because then I feel like it's almost like they're much less controllable, because they know that, it's not just this life, there's more after.
DMT doesn't care at all what's going on in the world. You can have war, you can have a nuclear apocalypse. DMT doesn't give a care. It's just going to still be there, shining blissfully in its beauty and splendor, ready to show you all of its wonders. And that's why they're so terrified of it, because they cannot censor it, they cannot destroy it, you cannot bomb these hyperdimensional realms, you cannot do anything to them except just behold their wonder and surrender. And anybody who is able to access these plant medicines or these sacred substances, the world is there instantly for them. And there's nothing that these evil deep state agendas can do to take that away from the human spirit. And that's why we have to do everything that we can always to share this information, because the more people awaken and have these experiences, the more peace we'll have in our world, the more awakening, the more corrupt leaders we will have. And it just has to start from the beginning of inner transformation, which will lead to the outer transformation that we see in this world that we need at this time, obviously.
Yeah. I just have one quick question. I don't know if it's true, but a long time ago, when I actually was looking into DMT, just kind of learning about it and learning more about the molecule and the structure and everything, I think I had heard that people have a DMT like experience at the moment of birth and at the moment of death. Have you heard that? And what is all that about?
At the moment of death, yes. At the moment of birth, I'm sure that there is some truth in that, but at the moment of birth, I can't really say if they're having a full-blown pineal gland activation.
Mm-hmm.
But the DMT trip is analogous to the birth canal. So when you are in the DMT trip, you feel like you're being reborn back into reality as you come back. You know, the few seconds that you have before you enter back into the 3D world, you are going through this galactic birth canal. So it's sort of like a flip inverse. But at the moment of death, yes, DMT is released into the body. And I don't know if they're having the same type of visions as somebody would who is taking it by inhaling it, smoking it. Nobody really knows. But there are people who have had near-death experiences who do say the experiences are similar. So there is this aspect of DMT at death, yes. But I don't know how similar it is to somebody who takes it during their life as we have, you know, at this time.
I have a question. So, for those that are not utilizing it as a party drug and they're, you know, they meditate and they're using this with intention, is there a way that, and I guess this is actually like a direct question, is there a way that you can control where you go? Almost like in astral projecting, you can control your dream. When you're doing these DMT trips, is there ever a point where you can start to like control where you're going in the trip and like in these realms?
I can speak for myself and I can speak for Terence McKenna because from all of the hours and years of listening to him speak about DMT, he's seen more of it than I have, obviously. I've probably seen like less than 1% of what he has seen. And it seems that you can't control where you go, but you can control sort of how pleasant the experience is going to be. For example, if you're having a bad day and you've been like stuck in traffic and you have bills to pay, and then you just slam yourself at home into this DMT trip, you're gonna probably go to hell.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's like I had a rough day, guys. I'm going to just
Yeah.
hit this DMT pen really quick.
So
Wow.
Terence McKenna spoke about visiting hell many times. And these are times where his mind has just been so overwhelmed with like current events, you know, like all the negativity you see on the news, all of that is, if that's in your mind, you're gonna have a really bad trip and you're gonna see some really terrible beings, okay? So on the flip side, if you wanna go to heaven, imagine if you had a week where you were just like in this hotel room by yourself on some very beautiful island beach, and you had all the money in the world, and you have been meditating all week, and you had really healthy food and highly nutritious smoothies day and night, and you were just so like glowing. And you came across this very potent psychedelic mushroom or DMT. And if you did it at night on a very beautiful starry evening, you would have a very, very beautiful, profound heavenly experience. So it's up to you how well you want to enter this realm. It's totally up to you. And that's what I have to stress so much about people who experience DMT and other psychedelics, is that you have to prepare yourself in the most pristine, respectful, sacred way. You have to really get yourself prepared for it. And you have to treat it as this pinnacle event of your life. You have to treat it as this rite of passage. You have to treat it as this moment where it's like everything in your life has led you to this moment. And now you're going to be shown something so sacred that you have to be sacred, basically. You have to make yourself as respectful as possible to the substance. You may even want to bow down to it 3 times before you take it, because you need to be in that mindset where nothing bad can go wrong. So that is my number one tip for anybody who is even considering entering these realms, whether it's a casual trip or a very serious and sacred trip that they want to have. Always treat it with respect, and it will show you that respect, and it will show you secrets and beauty that you could never have imagined.
What are some of the most like profound things that you have experienced in DMT that you have integrated into your life? Because previously you touched on that DMT can really show you who you are. And so what are some of the times that you have done it and it has kind of changed the way you thought about the world or how you perceive yourself, or maybe it's changed some of your behaviors?
The most profound thing I ever saw was this Pure Land full of Buddhas and Buddhist temples. And I also saw a lot of imagery from Vajrayana Buddhism. You may know this as Tantric Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. When I saw these images for the first time, I even saw the swastika, because the swastika is this ancient symbol of peace. It's so ancient that it's beyond the creation of our entire universe. This symbol has existed. It's the symbol of the photon of light. So when I saw this swastika, I was just like, whoa, this is insane. Like, to see it in hyperspace, it's just like, what? I mean, to even see a Buddha, it was just like, oh, this is what they look like? This is what they do? They're like this, not all of them, okay? I saw this golden Buddha who was lit from the inside. It wasn't like the sun was shining on him and it was reflecting gold, okay? This is like gold as light. I don't know how to explain it. There's no shadows in this realm, remember? So this golden Buddha is just like this child, and he's just rolling on the ground laughing. And I'm just like, this is the meaning of life? Just joy and happiness as a child, this Buddha consciousness. And the temples that I saw were just so gorgeous. They were so beautiful that it was terrifying. I was like in fear at their beauty, because I couldn't ever comprehend as an artist how anybody could create something that was just so magnificent and confusing. Like, it wasn't like a temple where you have like different floors, like first floor, second floor, up to the roof. These were like, have you ever seen an MC Escher painting? They're like these abstract optical illusions where they don't make sense on paper, but like the temples are just like, they don't make any sense. They're just going everywhere, and they're made out of light and crystals and lasers and these, it doesn't make any sense, but it's just so mind blowing, okay? And for me to see this was the most profound thing I've ever saw, because it meant that there was something for me in Buddhism that I had not yet found as this American artist who thought he knew everything about the visual world. And this was when I was maybe about 20, mid-20, 25-ish. I don't know. It's hard to remember. So to see these images as an artist, it just blows away your ego. And it just makes you realize you don't know anything. There's just so much you can't even create something like this if you wanted to try. And that was sort of the challenge that DMT gave me as an artist. It was like, you think you're such a hotshot artist? Why don't you try to recreate 1 second of this? And that's what I tried to do with my landscapes of the hyperspace, if you ever see my artworks.
Is this the tetrahedrons too that you have? No,
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
They're like, if you see them in these like abstract landscapes, then yeah, but not any music that you see on Instagram.
Okay.
But I'll show you guys later. But anybody wants to see them, they can visit arthousecontemporary.com. And my art website is still up, showing these landscapes. But anyways, so to see this Buddhist imagery, this is what changed my life. It made me realize I had to pursue this form of Buddhism that would bring me back to these images. And the only type of Buddhism that exists is referred to as Vajrayana Buddhism. This is the imagery that I saw. These are the temples I was seeing. And there's this practice in Vajrayana Buddhism known as Dzogchen. And Dzogchen is the meditation that I practice now as a Dzogchen yogi. But before all of this happened, I was watching videos of David Wilcock, and he was teaching about the rainbow body. And the rainbow body is when the human being, at the moment of death, their body turns into light, or they turn into a slew of rainbow lights that just spiral out of the body, and the physical body shrinks and either disappears into this light, or it just shrinks down into this tiny figurine, and the person attains enlightenment. Their consciousness goes to the Pure Lands, or they can be reborn back into Earth if they choose, or they can go to higher dimensional realms, whatever. So this enlightenment of the light body is the highest spiritual attainment that anybody can have. And one of the practices to attain this light body is called Dzogchen, which means natural grade completeness. It's this meditation where your mind is in this non-dual state of awareness. And you can sort of enter these non-dual states with shrooms and with DMT, but it's only a glimpse. So you have this connection with DMT and Buddhism and the non-dual mind of enlightenment. All of these things fascinated me. And that is why DMT was just on top of all of that utmost of profundity, because I had already had this interest in the light body, learning about the rainbow body. And then you have this DMT experience that many Buddhists have had, where they see these sacred images of Vajrayana Buddhism. And then on top of that, you have this lineage of these practitioners and Buddhists and monks and yogis who actually practice Dzogchen to its completion. And then they attain these bodies of light at the moment of death. And then they get to go to these pure lands that DMT is showing them, showing us.
Wow.
So I think that there's this connection of Buddhism throughout all beings. It doesn't matter where you were born. I think that the Buddhic mind, the enlightened mind of the Buddha, is not just his mind, it's all of our minds when we are in this highest state. Buddha just happened to be this Indian guy who was able to attain enlightenment for us to see as an example. Okay. And then after he died, his teachings have flourished, and other people have found his teachings and have expounded on them and have attained light body. So now we are all able to attain these states of enlightenment now in this lifetime. And I think that's what we are trying to do. But we get confused and so distracted in this life with all of these ridiculous things going on around us at all times in current events and stuff like that. So there's this lineage of enlightenment that flows through all of our minds and all of our past lives. It doesn't matter if it's called Buddhism or if it's called whatever type of spiritual name you want to call it, but there is this thread of sacred visions that will lead you to these same types of temples and locations in hyperspace. I think that you girls may have even seen Egyptian imagery, maybe on your trips, or hieroglyphics or pyramids, or you've had this sort of encounter. But many people have this Egyptian encounter, so have I. So I'm not saying that I'm Egyptian, right?
Mhm.
I'm not Egyptian, but I've had these visions. So these cultures, these spiritual cultures go through all of us. And we have to remember that we've had many past lives, countless eons of past lives. And we are just activating and seeing glimpses of these lives when we experiment with psychedelics.
So what is the practice of Dochen like? I guess if you were to try to explain it, like how it's different than what maybe the West sees as norm as like a general type of meditation.
Like the Headspace app.
Yeah.
You have to remember that all of these apps, they all are getting their information from Buddhism, but they don't call it that anymore. It's just rebranded as something else.
Or like mindfulness,
Yeah.
something
Exactly.
simple.
Mindfulness is strictly a Buddhist practice.
Mhm.
And it also goes back into ancient India with mindfulness and awareness. But you can say that all of these meditation techniques now are just some diluted form or rebranded form of the teachings of the enlightened ones. Let's just call them the enlightened Buddhas for now, because there were many Buddhas that were enlightened, not just one Buddha that we know of. So when we practice meditation, what we do is we want to have peace. We're trying to change our minds so that it's not having negative feelings and thoughts. That's the point of meditation. And to take that to its end, we think that meditation will eventually make us into a new person, a more sacred, holy, more person, because nobody just does meditation, just do it. Everybody wants to change and become something different. But Dzogchen is the most profound of all meditations because not only is it the highest of all of the Buddhist teachings, but it's also the most secret. And the reason because it's secret is for many reasons. One reason is that it's so hard for the typical person to understand it that it's secret to protect them from thinking wrong things about it, to think about it in a negative way, such as, this is impossible, I can never do this. Another reason why it's secret is that it's so easy that most people aren't going to believe it, that this is it. This can't be the meditation of the Buddhas. This can't be the path to the rainbow body. It's too easy. I don't believe it. And that's another reason why it's secret. It's so easy because it's all about being in the present moment without grasping onto the past or reaching for the future. Because when our mind is trying to grab or push away at thoughts, this is what creates the wheel of karma. This is what creates suffering. And this what keeps us in the wheel of rebirth. Is because at the moment of death, our mind is not in this non-dual state of peace. It's still worried about the past or fearful for the future. And when you're in the state of death, if your mind is just jumping around and having fear, you're going to be pulled into a lower rebirth because your consciousness is in a lower vibration. So what meditation helps people do is it helps them be calm for their entire life. And at the moment of death, they have no fear. And those who die with no fear, then they get to be reborn in pure lands or higher dimensional realms, or they get to just astral wherever they want to go. They don't have to be in any type of negative lower realm, let's just say it like that. So Dzogchen is this meditation of being in the present moment at all times, being aware of only now. And the more that you are aware of nowness, this nowness presence, this here-ness nowness, the more that you practice being in this state, the more that your mind is in a state of equanimity. And equanimity is the pinnacle of wisdom. Wisdom as opposed to knowledge. And all Buddhists, whether you practice Dharma or whether you practice any type of spiritual teachings, wisdom is the end goal. And wisdom is this non-dual state of peace at all times. And that is a quick explanation of what Dzogchen is.
I think that's so fascinating. I feel like it's almost, in my mind, it's kind of like the natural state that we should be in, but we've basically been our entire lives programmed against being in that state. So it's like a return.
At the moment of birth is when we are in the Dzogchen mind, because we have not absorbed anything from this negative world yet. So we are in the pureness of Dzogchen at the moment of birth. We have no fear, we have no worries, we have no doubts, we have no judgments. We haven't put labels on anything yet. We don't even know how to use language to label anything. So that is the purest state. That's the Dzogchen state of Buddha mind. But as 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, at the moment of birth, the doctor spanks us, we cry, and then we have fear, it's cold, we're hungry, we miss our mom. All of these emotions come into place, and then they stain that perfect mirror of our Buddha mind. Then we start to have suffering. We start to go round and round and round on the wheel of karma. And you can see how fear just keeps going to the moment of death. And then you die and you're reborn again because you're just in that confusion of who you really are. So psychedelics and Dzogchen together, these are ways of experiencing the pristine, clear light, white light nature of our minds. The true state that you were saying, the natural state. This is what we are supposed to be, but we've forgotten. We've forgotten because of all of the negativity we have in our world and on the media. It's just a huge distraction from finding these types of topics that we're talking about. Dzogchen and DMT are the two highest fascinating things on the Great Awakening map by far. And if you look at the Great Awakening map, DMT is outlined. It's not filled in the typeface. If you look at that type of detail that I put into the map, it's showing that DMT is not of this realm, of this dimension. It's something that it shouldn't exist. It's something that is so impossible to fathom. And it's there, existing, waiting for us. It's just that you have to prepare yourself spiritually for this journey, because it will change your life. It will change you forever. And it should lead you to a higher path in your life where you just like, forget all of this negative junk that I've been carrying. I'm going to make the change now to become a better person. And DMT and all psychedelics will push you to take better care of yourself and Mother Earth. I think that's one of the most important things that everybody who does psychedelics, they realize, is how fragile life is and how fragile our Earth is, and that everything in our world is just this terrible distraction and destruction of everything that is sacred.
So there's a quote that's on the map that it says DMT brings you close to the bardo. Is the bardo what you were trying, is that basic? I think we might have covered it in the last one, but I'm drawing a blank. Is that moment you were talking about where you're that close to death? Like it's almost like the veil between.
The bardo is the term for intermediate.
Okay.
So from the moment of your life now, the moment of your death, and the moment of your rebirth, the moment in between, that's known as the bardo. And the bardo is this intermediate period where you've died, but you haven't been reborn yet. And rebirth doesn't have to be in a human body. Rebirth means as a bug or as a god. Even gods are subject to rebirth. They may live for eons, but they're eventually going to have to be reborn. But unless you are a Buddha, you don't have to be reborn. You are all. So the bardo is this intermediate stage after death, before rebirth, where you enter into. But if you take DMT, for example, you are basically coming up to it and just barely grazing it and peeking into it. That's how close to death you are. And that's what DMT is so fascinating. And that's why people thrill seek it, because there's nothing else on this planet that can show you the wonders that it can show you. And it's going to make you just silent, because there's nothing you can say. It's just so ineffable, unutterable. And that is the same thing that happens when you become enlightened. When the Buddha became enlightened, the first thing he said was that this feeling is speechless. Nobody is going to understand what it is. So I'm just going to be quiet and remain in the jungle. And that's exactly what DMT experiencers say. That's what I did. I was just so speechless for years. I was like, what am I going to do with all of this information?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll just make artwork about it. And then after that, I said, you know what, I'm going to make an Instagram, just post memes about psychedelics. And then one day I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make the Great Awakening map, because this is what the mushroom said to me to create. And that's how the realms of DMT and mushrooms and psilocybin, that's how they ooze out into our reality. It's through these artistic endeavors, futile, but still these artistic endeavors that try to show what we've seen at these highest states of consciousness.
So as you mentioned earlier, you said that the time frame can last anywhere from like maybe 30 seconds to up to 5 minutes. When you've experienced these different time, the different trips or whatever, like have they been, do they feel like 30 seconds or 5 minutes, or do they feel like a lifetime?
A
like
lifetime.
Yeah, like how does the time element factor in?
I made a meme once that said 10 seconds of DMT is more powerful than 10,000 years of knowledge.
Wow.
So if you can imagine just living for 10,000 years as a human, reading every book, exploring every planet in the universe, and even going inside every planet and going to the craziest space stations of other alien star systems, everything that you could see is no match for 10 seconds of what you're going to see in the DMT realm, or even in the realm of psilocybin mushrooms. So you have to remember that there's just no way the physical world can even do justice to what this realm is all about. And I don't think this physical realm will ever come close to even understanding or comprehending or even explaining the purpose of its existence, why it's even there, what it's for. Because it doesn't care about the physical realm. It doesn't care what happens here. It's just going to exist forever. And this universe may have destroyed itself trillions of times. It's still going to be there, existing in all of its glory. And whatever being is lucky enough to go through the billions of years of evolution to find a planet where there's a mushroom growing on it that just happens to make this chemical compound that locks into the human brain, I mean, the probability of that already is just so mind-blowing to think about. It only takes a human brain to access this realm. You can't access it if you're a computer or if you're a whatever. Only the human mind can see this realm. So that's why now that we are in this human body, this precious human body that's so rare to get, this experience is so sacred. For anybody to censor it or try to speak about it in terms of their ignorance or fear is the worst destruction you can do for all of creation. This is something we have to protect as much as we can. It's the jewel of creation. It definitely is.
The crown jewel, the spirit molecule.
I like that.
Absolutely. They know what's up.
They know what's up. So this brings me to my next question, which is, and I think we've kind of touched on it before, but I have heard that when you are ready, it will find you, and to not seek it out. Is that true?
Absolutely true. Like,
Okay.
there's no explanation for how it came into my life. I was just living at the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people who just happened to know the right people, who happened to just have this stuff. There's no other explanation. It just doesn't make any sense. I was listening to the Tao Te Ching on YouTube, and I was listening to Terence McKenna for maybe 1 or 2 years, I think, maybe 3 years. I was just so fascinated with this topic, and I was like, wow, I really, really, really want to experience this. And then, when you live in Los Angeles and you are always surrounded by the types of people who are into like mushrooms, you can find mushrooms really easily. So that came first. And I had some very, very successful experiences with mushrooms. And that's what gave me the courage and the vibration, the frequency of mind to attract DMT into my life. Because I had already gone through the most terrifying and the most profound and beautiful psychedelic experiences with shrooms. That's when my soul, I guess, was like, all right, what else have you got? I'm ready. I'm ready for the max, okay?
I'm ready.
And you put out that intention to the universe. You say, I'm ready. I'm ready, and if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, I'll be patient, whatever. But it came. Somebody had it. Somebody who just knew somebody had it. And it just happened to be one of my closest spiritual friends at the time where we were living together. And that's how it comes. Mm-hmm. It's going to come through people that who know somebody who knows somebody. It's that simple. So just put out the
I just envision I'm like walking down the street and this like homeless man's gonna come up to me. He's gonna be like, "You want to hit this DMT pen?" I'll be like, "No way!"
It literally comes to you that fast, so you have to be ready for it.
I'm ready. I'll literally be so ready.
But what's sacred about DMT is that I don't want people to think that smoking it sort of lessens its sacredness, because the term smoking has like this negative connotation of like being a stone.
But right, that's a very good point.
Yes.
Smoking is this sacred act of breathing, okay? And when you breathe in air and prana, you are becoming one with the universe. So it just so amazing and so perfect that DMT can only be accessed by breathing it in. It doesn't want to be taken in any other way. And breathing it in is the quickest way for it to enter the body and go straight to your third eye, into your brain. And it's chemically so perfect that once it enters your body, it latches on to the parts of your brain that activate the psychedelic visions, as if the human brain was designed specifically for this reason. It's like the brain is this lost device that's only sole purpose was to eat DMT. But so many people live their whole life without ever getting to use it, without ever getting to use this main part of the brain. That's how profound DMT is. People don't understand that it's actually designed to be intaked by our brain as quickly as possible. So it's like being born on Earth and never opening your eyes. It's like, whoa, I have an organ that I can use to see the world. I didn't know that. Well, we have an organ called the brain that can enter the realm of hyperspace, but it can only do so if it inhales the perfect amount of DMT, dimethyltryptamine. It's so magical and so poetically perfect. I think that it's just beyond sacred. If there's another word, I keep using this word, but there's nothing else I could use. So holy.
That's so well said.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I think we should kind of take a little bit of a hard left. And, as the man behind 5D Awakening Consciousness, the creator of the Great Awakening Map, I'm sure our listeners are just so curious. Like, what are you currently working on? Where are you in the world? Like, what's your day to day look like? Like, what does the future hold for you in this moment in time?
You have to rewind like 4 years. Okay. 4 years ago, I was living in Southern California, Los Angeles, Orange County, and I was stuck in the matrix. There's chemtrails flying over me. There's fluoride running out of my tap water. I'm eating like GMO foods all over the place. Even if you eat like vegan and vegetarian, there's still like there's just stuff everywhere that's just like trying to get at you. And everywhere you go, there's like police hiding, trying to like give you tickets, and it's just like, this is ridiculous. Like, why am I living in this matrix that's just trying to drain me of money and energy? And there came a point in my life where I was like, okay, I have to change my environment because I want to become a yogi. I had that fascination of Dzogchen at the time, and I was practicing it for 2 years. But I was ready to just become a Dzogchen yogi forever and say goodbye to working full-time as a freelance graphic designer and dealing with clients and dealing with ego and dealing with all of that stuff that you have in the art world and the design world. And I was like, okay, if I'm really serious about this rainbow body, if I'm really serious about these realms that I saw during my psychedelic trips, if I want to go back to these realms, I have to do everything that I can in this life to be the spiritual person necessary to attain these enlightened modes of being. And I figured, if I go to Thailand, the country of my ethnicity, I can live in Thailand without having the worries of America. And I could practice Dzogchen in a way where I would live in a meditation retreat house, and just live in solitude alone and just focus on studying the Dharma, practicing Dzogchen, and continuing to share all of the spiritual knowledge that I've gained over the past 10, 12, 14 years since awakening, since creating the Great Awakening Map, and since studying meditation and consciousness, and then finally figuring it all out and landing at Dzogchen. So Dzogchen is the reason why I moved to Thailand to become a Dzogchen yogi, where I practice this awareness meditation. And I also try every day to share memes on Instagram and my other accounts just to make people aware of not only their true nature, but all of the secrets in our world that they have been missing out on their entire lives. And that's the whole point of creating Great Awakening Map, is to reveal these secrets to people who are just struggling in the matrix and they have no clue of who they truly are or what their potential is as a human being. And some people don't even know that death is a very important part of life, where they should prepare their heart and their mind for the journey continues after death. Because if they want to have a better life now and in the future, and futures to come, preparing for that now is the key. And that's what all spiritual teachings want us to do. Not only become a better person now to help all beings now in this life, but then at the moment of death, we're going to be able to travel to unimaginable higher realms where we will meet higher beings and learn even more spiritual lessons, so that the journey doesn't stop here in this life. People think that it's all or nothing now in this life, and it's this competition to be the best and then to just die with all of these things that you've amassed. But it's just so much more than that. And everything that I share on my 5D Awakening Consciousness, that Instagram page attempts to really destroy that cage that people have been living in, and just showing them that there's hope for this life. There's just so much more than suffering and struggling every day.
It's so interesting because when it's just a stark contrast, because you are at this meditation retreat, you're meditating how many hours a day?
It's just like an all-day thing. Like
And
you are never away from practice. I
that
mean, you may
is
forget about the practice, but at those moments of forgetting, you are returning back because you're forgetting.
because you're
So
forgetting.
forgetting is actually an important part of the practice. It helps you return back to it. So you actually do look forward to the moments of forgetting.
Wow. And
Yeah,
so you have
it's a constant practice.
constant practice, but it's like this
Yes.
modern Buddha take, because then it's like you also have this meme account and you create memes online, and like your presence on Instagram, and it's just you're just such a unique character. Yeah, and it really is just like this profound way of being. I mean, I've never met anybody like you. There's not many of you out there, but just to really like take it to the next level and try to achieve rainbow body and Dochen, and I mean, you're living it. You're living it.
But I like what you girls were saying earlier, that Dzogchen sounds like a natural thing. And for myself, doing this lifestyle, it just seemed like there was no other thing to do. It just seemed so natural. Because when I saw the realms that the first mushroom strip showed me, I was like, what is this? This is so crazy. I'm so like, so wowed. And I wanted to do everything that I could to live a life where I could be in these realms forever. And it was a chase to try to like become psychedelic, you know. There was many years of this where I would keep doing psychedelics thinking that, yeah, maybe, you know, I'm gonna be able to live in these lands, you know, all my life. But then you're back in life and you gotta like pay taxes and stuff. So for me, I was like, what's the point of these psychedelic trips? They're only going to show me something that is impermanent. And impermanence is the greatest truth of all life. Nothing lasts, nothing is forever. So these psychedelic trips are only a glimpse of impermanence, what it means to live in a reality where nothing is forever. You have to live with that truth. So I realized that the only thing that I could do to prepare myself for these higher spiritual levels is to practice meditation. And then I was realizing that the rainbow body is the pinnacle of the human condition. If the human body can turn into pure light, why isn't everybody doing it? Is this some sort of lost art form? Or is it something that's just too hard to do and people are just so like uninspired to do it because they have so many things to worry about? I mean, you can think of it in terms of like distractions of life pulling us away from our true nature, which is true. So I wanted to, okay, after creating a Great Awakening map, what's the whole point of that? I better seek the highest truth on the map and pursue it, other than wasting my life away in the matrix. So it was such a natural thing to keep studying these forms of Buddhism that I encountered in the hyperdimensional realms. And they just so happen to lead to the path of Dzogchen, which is the path of the rainbow body. And whether you attain rainbow body or whether you attain lower forms of the rainbow body, which are just like at the moment of death, you don't turn into light, but your consciousness goes to the pure lands. There's different levels of attaining enlightenment. So not everybody has to become rainbow body, although that is ultimate. Most people will just die at the moment of death, and their consciousness will transfer to these higher realms. And that is the most common form of enlightenment that many, many monks and lamas and Buddhas and yogis are still attaining to this day, all throughout, all throughout the world, primarily India, Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan, these spiritual countries. But any practitioner can attain these states. You and I are definitely on the path to understanding these enlightened ways of being. And I hope that everything that I share every day, I hope that people will see this nature that they should naturally pursue. It's so natural to pursue this.
So I'm kind of wondering what your perspective is on what the purpose of living in this life is. It's like if all these, like all these magnificent places and things are out there, or like higher dimensional places, like what is this and why are we here?
Why am I paying my taxes?
This question and my answer to it continuously changes throughout the years. But before I discovered Buddhism and reincarnation in past lives and stuff like that, I would say that the purpose of being reborn on this earth, this particular earth, is for the spiritual lessons that it teaches us. And Dolores Cannon, the greatest quantum hypno past life therapist, regressionist, she, from the 10,000 clients that she's had with past life experiences, they've all said that humans come to this earth to learn the spiritual lessons that it offers, because earth is one of the most challenging spiritual classrooms in the universe. What a human learns here is so much more powerful than what you can learn on other planets. So to be reborn here is like a lottery. You have to win the cosmic lottery of being lucky enough to have a human body to experience the challenges that earth gives us. And sometimes these challenges are so sucky, right? Nobody wants to pay taxes. It's just like a waste of your time and energy in your life. And it's the one thing that I hate doing the most. So earth is full of these experiences that help us overcome this emotional, spiritual struggle. And if we overcome them, then we become higher beings. It's that simple. And when you look at it from the Buddhist Dharma perspective, we are reborn into this life because of our past life karma. All the good deeds that you've done in all your past lives, all the good things you've done, has made you lucky enough to be reborn in a human body, because a human body is the only vessel that can attain enlightenment. It's the only vessel that can attain a rainbow body. Nothing else can attain enlightenment. Not even gods can attain enlightenment. Only a human being can attain enlightenment. And from that moment of becoming enlightened is the moment that you become the Buddha mind, which is the ticket to travel to any multidimensional realm you want without having to be reborn. But many Buddhists choose to be reborn to help all beings. They come back as a human, or they come back as a very high lama or something, for example. And these lamas will be reincarnations of previous Buddhas who come back into this life to teach. It's crazy. It's insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not even ready for it as a bodhisattva. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to come back. I just want to go to the Pure Lands.
The Pure Lands and chill.
Yeah. So,
Pure Lands and chill.
That's what I'm going to make a t-shirt of.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, I love it. Please do.
So the bodhisattvas, they vow to come back and be reborn to help all beings on earth, which is incredible, an incredible dedication, the highest. So for myself, I would love to go to visit the Pure Lands and then maybe somehow emanate back into the world to help all beings. I mean, there's many ways of being reborn or re-emanated back to help all beings. And
I just had a random thought, like what if you're doing it now?
I was thinking that too.
I'm pretty sure you girls are doing it too.
I don't know.
That's the only reason
Maybe.
why you're having a conversation with me. Because it's said that this is one of the the secret esoteric aspects about Dzogchen is that to hear the word Dzogchen, you have to have been born 10,000 times before in positive lifetimes to be
Whoa.
lucky enough to be a human, to hear the word Dzogchen, and to be given that key to access the rainbow body. That's how sacred Dzogchen is to come across. So they say that anybody that you meet who even shares Dzogchen or shares the teachings of Vajrayana Buddhism, for example, you have to consider yourself to be very highly fortunate. And anybody who listens to this podcast, they are going to be one of those fortunate 10,000 lifetimes they've had with us before to be able to be given the path, shown the path to this light body. So we are all bodhisattvas, and sometimes we forget for many years until we walk the path. But just like me, it took me 35 years before I was even interested in Buddhism. And then from the DMT trips showing me these sacred Buddhist visions, I was like, okay, there's something here. I have to seek it. Otherwise, I would be seeking maybe a more Egyptian path, such as the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. I think a lot of people follow that path because it's their past life. I see a lot of people on Instagram teaching enlightenment through the Emerald Tablets, but they would never touch on Buddhism. Or they would teach the Law of One, for example, because the Law of One is very Egyptian, related with Ra, and that whole lineage of enlightenment in that own form of enlightenment. So what we find in this lifetime is meant for us, but it doesn't mean that you can always switch and move on to different teachings. Like for me, when I was a child, I went to 12 years of private Christian school.
Me too.
So I grew up
12 years.
I grew up singing Jesus songs every day. Okay. Yeah. And I also ate vegetarian every day because my high school and elementary school only served vegetarian hot dogs and stuff.
I bet those were they were probably GMO laden.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Soy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I grew up in this hardcore Christian Seventh-day Adventist community known as Loma Linda. It's in Southern California. And after high school, that's when I finally was dropped into this liberal college, UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine. And that was 4 years as a contemporary art student. So I had this liberal mindset thrown at me where everybody, and nobody cared about God. Everybody was just free in the wind, okay? And then I sort of adopted that mindset as well as I went through college and art school. And then coming out of art school is when I had this lull of being a freelance designer where I was just at home every day. And I had sort of no influential influences on me other than watching these spiritual YouTube videos of metaphysical and consciousness and everything that David Wilcock taught at that time. I was watching his videos. I was watching Himnasam Harameen teach about sacred geometry. I discovered
real quick, are these videos even still there anymore, or have they been censored and taken down?
They're all over the internet.
They're still there.
All over YouTube and Gaia. You can find them. Everything that I'm talking about, you can still find. So, I spent a decade just fascinated with all of these metaphysical lectures on YouTube. And that's how I amassed my knowledge enough to create the Great Awakening Map. It was just from watching these profound lectures of metaphysical consciousness sciences. And I eventually, walked the path by picking up meditation and learning how to eat healthy, avoid all of the GMOs and, all of the conscious living that we see, all of that stuff. I adopted it and tried to become more conscious. And it eventually just kept leading me more and more to this path of the higher realms, I guess you could say. Hyperdimensional realms found me when my consciousness was vibrationally able to accept this information, this high vibrational information. There's no other way. You couldn't find it if you were, depressed, sloshing through life. You have to lift yourself out a little bit high before these things find you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Okay, so I think it's time for the 5D fire shot round. Okay, so I just have to take note of something that you had said earlier, and I feel like every time somebody looks at the Great Awakening map, you always see something different. You always pick up little things here and there. It's always different every time you look at it. And you had just mentioned like even DMT is written in this typeface that's like more of this ethereal typeface. And I thought that was like a very fun fact that even the fonts are like so well thought out and like the design of all of it. And I think that that's really cool. And so with that being said, we chose a couple of things on the map. And if you just want to give like a quick like definition or brief rundown, obviously like these things are so mind blowing. So to put them in a couple of like sentences is kind of hard, but are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one that jumped out was jump gate portals.
Oh, okay. Going into the secret space program kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I just saw that one and I was like, I wonder what he means by jump gate portals.
One of
Like
the
what?
most bizarre things I ever heard in my life, because I live near Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles there's this neighborhood known as El Segundo, and it's just like this crabby place nestled under the bridge of the LAX airport. And there's all these aerospace buildings there that exist, like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Skunk Works, whatever, okay? And there was a whistleblower that was on YouTube one time. I forgot his name, but maybe it'll come to me. But he's one of the older whistleblowers. And he was saying that when he worked for these secret aerospace corporations, he would just go to work every day, and it would just be this nonchalant office building that he goes into. It doesn't even have anything that remotely would resemble anything profound inside, like no security gates, no nothing. He goes to work every day and goes into this office room. And then at the end of this room, there's like this metal door. It's a very heavy door. It takes about, he said something like, it takes like 10 minutes for the door to open. It's like very slow and very heavy. But once you go inside and it closes behind you, you're taken to Mars. So this door opens into this facility on Mars, and then he just goes to work. And then at the end of the day, his memory is wiped, and then he comes back to Earth and just drives home on the 405 freeway.
Casual.
So there are these jump gates of all sorts of levels of technological complexity. So this one, for example, was just a random jump gate that they were able to build into like an office building. And then there are other jump gates scattered throughout the Middle East in the Iraq area that are like the stargates. And these ancient stargates are made out of stone. And the reason why our military and other world militaries have wars in this area is to try to take command over these stargates and try to activate them and try to hide them from the public. It's sort of like a contest to who can find the most operational stargate and use it for whatever advantages they want, nefarious reasons or who knows. So there's various types of jump gates and stargates that exist around our planet, whether they be ancient stargates made of stone or these metal kinds of elevator, more advanced types that are, built by humans, and maybe extraterrestrials also give the instructions on how to build them, but they're being used with the negative aspects of our secret space programs throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
So just that one topic, jump gates, went into this
that's
whole
awesome.
new, the Great Awakening map is just full of mind-blowing topics that you could literally spend your entire lifetime researching. You could just be a jump gate researcher for the rest of your life and
For
die.
the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of our secret desires is at one point to do like deathbed interviews. I know we've talked about that before, but I always thought it would be so awesome to be able to like get some of that information like at the end of someone's life if they're willing to like give it up. It made me think of that. I don't know why.
The best person you should interview his name is James Gilliland.
We interviewed
We
him.
did.
That's right.
Yeah.
We interviewed the best guest.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was awesome.
His is the best.
Yes.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Matrix Assassins deathbed interviews coming to a podcast near you.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is entheogens.
Entheogens is just another name for psychedelics.
Oh, okay.
So if you talk to like a scientist like Graham Hancock, for example, he'll use the term entheogens intermixed with psychedelics. It's more of like an official academic way of referring to them.
Okay. And then the next one is ADHD. I was curious why that made the map.
That one is very popular. People ask me about that a lot. And you have to be knowledgeable on Dolores Cannon's work. Are you guys aware of everything that she's done?
Not everything, no.
I wouldn't say everything, but I've read a few of her books.
Okay, well, listening to her on YouTube is more than enough. You can understand everything that she teaches and everything that she's discovered about past lives. And all of the children who are born today who have ADHD, it's because in past lives they've been star children, or they've been ascended masters, or they've been higher spiritual beings, 5D beings, 6D beings. So for them to come into this human life, they are like stuck in this human body that's just so limiting. It's like a fraction of their infinite potential of who they were. So their bodies cannot handle their high vibrational consciousness. That's why they're such geniuses. That's why they're so creative. And that's why it's so detrimental that we're giving them medication that's dumbing them down and destroying their true potential of who they are. They're like multidimensional beings stuck in this dimensional realm. And you have to kind of sort of see these special children in that way, whether they are referred to as star children, indigo children, wanderers, light workers. There's so many names for this generation of children that are just, some of them can like see in the dark, for example. Some of them are telepathic. Some of them can remember their past lives. So you can imagine like this type of information is so big. It cannot fit into our human bodies. So I think a lot of children have ADHD because their creativity is just off the charts. And I think we all have it to some degree, especially if we're creative people, musicians and artists and writers and chefs. We sort of have this ADHD that we channel through our work and our creativity and our projects. So the degree of ADHD is different for each person, but we have to remember that the past life reasons of why we have certain challenges in this life, the past life reasons are going to tell us why things that we are born with, such as ADHD, why there are challenges, why we chose this life to have these experiences.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, I guess it's not ADHD. I think it's adult ADD. Like I didn't get diagnosed with it until like I was in college, which I think is supposedly common for women because they don't always show like the hyperactive aspect of it. It's more of like the attention deficit aspect. But I mean, if you think about it, like living in this matrix, like it's like you find the things you're interested in and then you just like hyper focus on them. So like everything else doesn't matter unless it's something that like really captivates you. So I think that's probably why some people just have such a hard time doing like the normal mundane tasks.
Like sitting in a desk at
Yes.
school.
Or like,
In a jail.
office work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, no wonder you're depressed, but here's a pill. Don't change your environment. Just take this Adderall and you're going to be just fine. You'll acclimate.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Girls know what's up.
It's terrible. That explains my Adderall, my old Adderall addiction.
I
Nicole,
think
do you want?
not a lot of people meditate in this world. So I think that if we all practice meditation in some way or form, it's going to lessen that type of ADHD to be prominent in our life. I think meditation has changed me from being this hyperactive designer artist who used to just party every day on the weekends into somebody who just doesn't care about that stuff anymore. It's more focused on the inner transformation of Dharma. So I think meditation can really change anybody physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Meditation is the cure-all for everything in this reality. And I think that meditation in all sorts of forms of sitting and being creative and even walking meditation, there's all sorts of ways to heal the mind. The
So
mind and
then,
the heart are always connected. Heal the mind, heal the heart.
and there's so much research to back it up too. I mean, they've shown like the brain changes and just like the multitude of benefits that come along with it.
Our modern society is so obsessed with brain and stuff like that, but it's always heart/brain. It's always heart first and then brain, because everything goes through the heart before it goes through the mind. So we have to remember that every time that we talk about mind, or every time that I say the word mind, what I really mean is heart mind or body consciousness. It's an entirety. It's not just a thing up here between our ears. It's this entirety. Even our aura stretches out like 30 feet. So we have this very big bubble that we are floating through space, and we're just like this, this dandelion just going about to the wings of the universe. There's nothing that can stop us. The only thing that can stop us is our mind. The mind is the only thing that creates walls and barriers. Other than that, nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Language is what creates the barriers. Our mind creates these barriers. And that's what the whole point of Dharma in Buddhism is to realize that nothing exists. Therefore, there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to be anxious about. All you need to do is just rest right here, right now, and just be perfect. And that's all you will ever be and have been. Before the universe was created, this awareness of just being here now like this, see, we're all like sitting in peace right now. There's no like torture happening. This peace is something that has been unchanging since primordial time. Every life we've had, every consciousness that we've been in, this moment of nowness, awareness, has always remained the same. It feels like a smooth evenness, a supreme equalness of everything. Your thoughts are at rest. Between two thoughts, the silence.
Oh, I like that. Between two thoughts.
Between two thoughts is who you truly are.
Oh,
and one of my favorite quotes, this one quote made Dzogchen so profound for me. And between two thoughts, there is a Buddha. So all the Buddhas that are enlightened, they exist between two thoughts. That space of bliss, you can call it silence or bliss or non-dual awareness. That's the Buddha mind. And just right there for 5 seconds, you two girls just were Buddhas. And now we're talking again and thinking about what to say next. So we're not Buddhas, we're just normal beings. And in that moment, that profundity of you were just a Buddha, that's going to make you say, oh my gosh, if I practice for 1 minute today, just doing that, I'm going to be a Buddha for 1 minute. And then that's why I said the practice is continuous. You just keep going into this state of non-dual present awareness many times throughout the day, maybe for 1 second at a time, but many short sessions throughout the day, eventually become one long session that you can't distinguish between normal life and Buddha life. That's Dzogchen.
What do you think your longest period was?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
I don't count.
Okay, because then if
It's
you're
not one of
thinking about it, it's like you're negating the whole purpose.
Some people can go for like hours and they'll know, like, I went for 8 hours today with no thoughts. But guess what happens at the end of 8 hours? They have to go to the bathroom, they have to go eat dinner. So they're not a Buddha anymore. They're thinking about. So the point of sitting for 8 hours is just for sitting 8 hours. What's more powerful and what I've been taught by the lamas is short sessions many times throughout the day, all throughout the day. And then it becomes more and more pronounced. You start to become more aware of the non-dual state, the Buddha mind. And then all of your negative emotions start to have no grasp on you. You start to worry less. You start to take life less seriously. And then you just become more closer to what is known as enlightenment, which is this state of non-dual peace and bliss, no matter what happens. And then in that state of mind, you're able to better help all beings. You naturally become more compassionate. You have a natural inclination to want to help others, which is the whole point of, I think, being a human, is to not help yourself only, but to master yourself so that you can master the art of helping others, which is a very difficult thing to do, to help others. Mm-hmm. It's like, it sounds so like easy, like, yeah, that's great. I do that all the time. But it's really hard to get up out of your chair and go out of your house and physically, help people. So that's one skill that spiritual seekers develop, is that altruism that seems to be a sort of universal permeation. It just seems that everything in the universe leads to this altruistic Mother Earth love type of relationship, especially people who have tried ayahuasca. They discover this Mother Earth love healingness to all of creation. And most psychedelics will bring you there too, but I think that the plant medicine of ayahuasca is more pronounced in that nurture, motherly, feminine aspect of the psychedelic journey, which I haven't had of an experience with.
Do you think DMT is more of a masculine energy or more neutral?
I still think that it's a feminine energy, but it's just it's like a birth canal with neon lights and like trance music. It's just like hitting so hard,
So I was a C-section baby, but I just feel like I would love to go down a birth canal with neon lights in my next journey.
Yeah. It's just full of lasers. You're not gonna believe it, but it exists.
I can't wait.
So okay. Then the next one we have here, we only have 2 more. The next one is temporal dementia.
Okay, this is another secret space program topic.
Oh, is it? Oh, weird. Really? It's weird how we're like being drawn to those again. Okay.
So certain people in the secret space program, some whistleblowers have been on these spaceships that are able to not only travel to other parts of our galaxy with like in a snap of fingers, they're also able to go forward and backward in time to a certain aspect. Because when you are in a UFO, these craft are powered by free energy devices. And when you have free energy, that means you have unlimited potential to travel anywhere in the universe at any time, which means you're also able to travel forward and backward in time. It's just one of those byproducts of being able to be instantaneous. So some of these people who travel on these ships, if the ships travel forward and backward in time, sometimes they get this temporal dementia where they're sort of out of sync of our time when they return. So they either get sick or they die, or they have to like go into these regeneration healing chambers where the time is normalized to our time now, space time, who knows what type of secret space program time that they use. But that's one symptom of people who travel on these UFO craft that are made by humans, not the alien UFOs. They don't deal with that stuff. They got it figured out. But it's the military UFO craft that sometimes experiences these things. And some people who go through the jump gates experience these things as well. So it's just one of those fascinating secret space program legends.
Okay. Nicole, do you want to ask the last one?
The last listed one? Yeah. So the next one is, it's more of like a phrase. The entire universe is the emanation of a single holographic photon.
If you look at the map, there's another section that says the amplituhedron. And this is a shape, a geometric shape that was just recently found within the last 5 years by these either Ivy League students or like MIT students. They were like 2 Russian guys, I think they were, who discovered like the smallest shape in all of existence, which is something that they refer to as the amplituhedron. But it's just 1/4 of the tetrahedron, the Merkaba. And that is the shape of the photon of light. So 1 photon being the smallest particle, the smallest shape, whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't exist. It's just this idea, this thought of the smallest shape, referred to as an amplituhedron. This is the building block for all of reality. And there are some theories that say that nothing in our entire universe exists except for this 1 amplituhedron. And because it is only 1, it's able to be anywhere at any time because it has nothing else to reference where it's at. Because there's nothing else. If there were 2 amplituhedrons, you could have distance. Like you can say this one is closer than it is now. But since there's only 1, it doesn't know where it is in space and time. So it could be anywhere. It could be said to be at the end of space. It can be at the center of space. It's everywhere at the same time. So if this 1 particle can be anywhere at the same time, it could also be anything at the same time. It could be the shape of a circle. It could be the shape of a flower of life. Or it could be the shape of every planet, every star, every galaxy at the same time. So there's a belief that everything in creation is just this 1 shape vibrating so fast that it's creating all of reality with itself. And when you are in the psychedelic state, this is so obvious. And when you are meditating in the non-dual state of mind, this is so obvious. Everything is just here and now. And you can call it a particle, or you can call it a thought. I like to call it a thought, because a thought and a particle, what's the difference? There's no, thought is everything. Thought is space. It takes up all of space. You can think right now the entirety of the universe, and you can even go beyond that. So thought is faster and bigger than all of creation. So it's the same thing as this 1 particle, this amplituhedron, the photon. And that is what is meant by the entire universe is just this emanation of a single photon. And that's why everything is an illusion, because we think everything is real and solid. And we think that things last forever. And that's what creates the wheel of karma. That's what creates rebirth and suffering, is to think that things are real and then become sad or disappointed when they're destroyed, or when we lose something, when we lose our iPhone for 5 minutes. That fear is what keeps us in this wheel of karma. So if we can see the illusion of everything, then we are enlightened. So that's why on the map, if you just delve into this 1 topic, it's going to lead you to enlightenment, but it's going to lead you there through sacred geometry. And there's sort of a meditation involved in there, like what we were just doing, like imagining space as 1 thought or 1 particle, and then realizing that there's nothing to fear because it doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is our language being used to say that it exists. So why do we have to fear anything in our life? That's the whole point of enlightenment. And you can learn that just from a little shape called the amplitude-hedron. Cute little quarter Merkaba.
Cute little shape. Okay, so I think we definitely asked this on the first time that you came on the podcast. And so, but we're going to ask it again. And the question is, what is one song that penetrates your soul?
Oh my God. Again?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it could be the same one, but
Or it
maybe,
could be different,
or it
yeah.
could be a different one.
Okay. The first time I said this Yanni song called
Mhm.
Tribute,
Yeah.
Which is like so epic. Yeah.
it's just like this worldly song with all of these spiritual motifs from every religion. That's why I liked it. But remember I told you, like as a child, I would make fun of Yanni and stuff.
Yeah.
So now in my life, okay, as a Dzogchen yogi, the only thing that I love is just, I don't know if you can call it silence, because it's not silence. It's just like the sound of mind itself. It can be a song or it could just be silence, but those are just labels. So when you're a Dzogchen yogi, everything is like a song to you. Everything is beautiful. Everything is already music. So when I turn on music today, if it has lyrics in it, I can't stand it because it's detracting from something that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself as a Dzogchen yogi, my answer would just be nothingness.
We'll add
Like
it to the
that.
playlist. I think I sent you a message the last time I had you on because you said this Yanni song. The next day I walk into one of my accounts and they had this shelf and it said like free books, free things for sale. And the only thing on the shelf was this Yanni CD. And it was the day after we had recorded the podcast. And I was like, what are the chances of that ever happening? And it was just a really cool synchronicity that I just was like, okay, like I think I'm on the right path today. And so it said free. So I took the CD. I still have it because I just feel like I was like, this was meant for me.
Definitely.
So bizarre. So many things like that occur when you are in this synchronicity state of mind. I mean, I know you girls are like spiritual seekers, so I know that synchronicity fills your life all the time in different ways. And even just this podcast today is just a synchronous timing of like me being ready to finally have a conversation again with people about DMT. Because when you mentioned that you wanted to talk about that, I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't visited this realm in years. Like, what am I going to be able to share? But amazingly, I've been talking my mouth off for the past hour or something.
Yeah.
So there's still information wanting to be said about it. And my higher self is trying to channel that information. Oh, I wanted to say something before about music. If anybody is doing a psychedelic journey or DMT trip, my high recommendation is to listen to spiritual meditation soundtracks that you can find on YouTube. Some of these are like 528 hertz healing tone, or some of them will say like spiritual healing music. Just find one that's like very ethereal and like happy, like a major happy sounding. And then when you listen to that on a psychedelic trip, when you eat mushrooms or DMT, that is what's going to really propel you into past the membrane, past the gates, into the deeper, highest realms. And sometimes you want to put it like kind of low, not too loud, because when you're on psychedelics, everything's amplified like by 1 trillion. So you want to have it like on a proper volume. You want to have it playing at a proper part of the soundtrack where it's most pleasant sounding or mystical, magical. It's a good term. This will really help you enter into that elf magical land of magic. It's going to really make you have the full positive, happy experience that psychedelics can show you. And the type of music you listen to will change the trip. So pick something that's very peaceful, spiritual, sacred. You can even experiment. Sometimes you can listen to like bells or chanting, or maybe even like some parts of the trip you may get up and like refresh yourself and then come back down and like listen to like rock and roll or something like that. There's different modes of every trip, and every mode will be full of like new music or a new distraction. For example, one time I was like staring at my fixie bike for like 2 hours in the garage. I was just like fascinated with it and what it represented and how it worked and how it looked. So like you can get like stuck in these themes during every psychedelic trip, and they're hilarious and they're profound and they have fun. But music is a very profound part of it that can really eject you to truly hyperdimensional places. Because sometimes when you don't listen to music, you may be stuck with like the traffic sound outside, and it's going to pull you into a really like negative
like dissonant
crevice of the fractal arm, and you're going to be like feeling like dirty and demonic. And the only way to save yourself is to like sing your way out of it, or to put on some really good spiritual music, or drink some water. But there's many ways to save your life.
Don't call 911.
Yeah.
You should throw your phone out of the house.
Yeah, seriously.
As far away as you can.
Yeah.
And always promise yourself, never go into public. Like you should make a note of it. Never.
That's such a good point.
Never open your front door and
Yeah.
go and swim into the ravine that one of my trips told me to do. I was like, no, I'm not opening the door. I'm swimming in the ravine.
Yeah.
I will not do that. You have to make that
not.
intention. Do not go outside.
Yeah.
It's serious. You have to really make sure you understand the borderline between physical reality and heaven, I guess you can say.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's kind of wild to think that our timelines have crossed once, and it's really insane to think that they got to cross again. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your time with us today.
Thank you so much for listening to all of my crazy babble about hyperspace and beyond. And if anybody wants to find the map, the website has changed and it's now awakening5d.co. And the Great Awakening map and all the things that I share can be found there. And if you want to support me, you can visit the website. And also my Instagram is still the same, 5D Awakening Consciousness.
And I'll make sure to, I'll have it in our notes too, so people can easily access it.
Thank you. And please have me on again to explore more topics if you want.
Oh, absolutely. We would love to. There's like so many rabbit holes and trajectories we could get into.
So many rabbit holes and trajectories that we'll just pick them at. We'll just close our eyes and like put our finger on the map.
But I really like the ones you guys picked because they were all secret space program related. And that is by far one of the top 3 topics.
It's so, yeah. And we've had people like come on and talk about the secret space program after you had come on, because you did say like that was something that like you did a lot of like heavy research into.
Oh, even James Gilliland. I mean, he's the expert. He sees these craft all the time in the skies. In his backyard. So he's actually the person seeing these craft. And some of these craft are not secret space program, they're actually ET craft. I think the majority of his contacts are ET craft, benevolent ET beings. So like he's actually seeing them, whereas I'm just researching and telling about them. So your podcast is incredible in that there's so many levels of connectedness of the people who are actually seeing them, touching them, and then somebody like me who's more obsessed with, sharing all of the fascinating things about them and having people dig into it themselves, because that's the only way they can truly grow, is to find this information themselves and seek it themselves and care about it themselves. It's also based on their karma too, whether they're going to find this information or not. So keep your karma high and your vibrations high, and this information will come to you guys at the right time and place.
Love it. Thank you
Yeah.
again so much.